You guys hear me?
They'll let you know if it isn't.
Okay. All right, all right, all right. Now I'm feeling extra special here. So anyway, I'm part of our leadership team at CrashPlan. I've been working there for about 4 years. First of all, is everybody familiar with CrashPlan, or hands up if you are kind of, okay. About a year ago, we split off from Code 42, who we worked for before, and CrashPlan was a part of Code 42. Now we are our own separate company, which has been fantastic because we've been doing a lot of investment within the product, and we're coming out with some new features and functionality. Towards, I think in September, is going to be a big release in terms of reporting and so forth. But we're super excited to continue to build upon the product and expand it as we move forward. So we've been around for about 18 years. We have over 450 colleges and universities that use CrashPlan. You know, the reason why is, you know, I love this quote because it's just so simple. It's just the best one out there. That's from Virginia Tech. We do business here at Penn State. We do it at a lot of universities. And so what I like to think of is, why should you care? Why do you care about an endpoint backup solution? And maybe I should just rephrase it. What is an endpoint backup solution? And anything that's on this Mac, or on my laptop, or my desktop, every 15 minutes, this is syncing to the cloud, okay? So initially, we take initial backup from the machine that goes automatically, no user interaction. And initially, it takes that initial backup. All of the data that's on that machine that we have it configured for. Now, with CrashPlan, it's unlimited data in the cloud. So take it all. And after that first initial backup set gets hit, secure in our cloud, everything's encrypted, AES 256, it's secure. Every 15 minutes is the default. We're gonna take the delta changes and we're gonna send that to the cloud. So worst case scenario, if I chuck this laptop across the room and it breaks, I should have the last 15 minutes. Now what sets us apart, when I say why should you care, because it's gonna protect your data, but more importantly, it's gonna save you a ton of time. That's why you care. When you think of CrashPlan, and you think of, it's kind of like an insurance policy for your data. It's fine to back it up, but what really comes into focus here is when you want it back. How quickly can I get it back? Can I be back up and running quickly? And that's what we do. In fact, what separates us apart from a lot of our competitors is the fact that we can restore your data 3 to 9 times faster than anybody else. And there's some reasons for that on how we do it, and I can get into that. But initially, we have a proprietary algorithm that when you're restoring your data, we're gonna hit you with the stuff that you just recently used first, right? So you can literally get back up and running in minutes. So the files that you were just using or recently are gonna restore first, and then everything else is gonna come behind the scenes. Questions? Cool. So I should say, we're not going 75 minutes today, so, unless you have a ton of questions afterwards. But it's secure. I mentioned AES 256 encryption. I'm happy to talk more security if anybody wants to talk that. Scalable, Mac, Windows, Linux, same process. It's like parity, especially with, like I say, I work with public sector and universities and so forth, but a big part of that is, you know, being able to use the same thing across different endpoints because not everybody uses Macs, right? And then the cool thing is it's centrally managed and it's straightforward and scalable. So to kind of give you an idea, we have, so we're across a number of organizations as well. So, you know, big organizations that like to mess with, I guess, social media organizations, I might say. really large ones that are always in the news. They like to mess with, those things you put on your virtual reality. I know my kids have them. But to give you an idea, this is not like your normal software. It is kind of a set it and forget it, because we have 30,000 endpoints that are managed by one person. And once it's on your endpoint, it is, you don't need to have any user interaction. But the cool thing is, when I say straightforward and centrally managed and self-service file access, you as a user, like if you say you're supporting some users and so forth, they can self-service, so they can bring down and restore their files themselves. In fact, about 85% of our customers do that. Use it from the client standpoint. Now, as an administrator, you could push it out. What I do know most of the time is the administrators are showing folks, hey, I need to get this deleted file I deleted back 3 months ago. Now I need it. They show them how to do it, and then they do it moving forward. So very easy to use, and I think that's kind of why it's not resource intensive, if that makes sense. Secure, scalable. Like I said, everything's in the cloud. We are a SaaS product, unlimited cloud storage. Since we've been around for so long, the product is super flexible. So if you want to do different things, or if maybe you have other folks that manage different departments and so forth, and you want them to have like administrative access, you can do that. So virtually, I say virtually about anything you want to do, slice it up. You kind of have that ability. Of course, I'm sure there'll be something that will stump me, but for the most part, it's very flexible. I mentioned it's a consistent platform across all three, Linux, Apple, Windows. We're pretty close to day one support on all the OS versions. We know, like I mentioned earlier, the 30,000 people. Usually when Apple makes changes, we're pretty much right on top of it, but we don't know when they're going to all the time. So, as you know, but for the most part, we target day one to support all the OS versions. Oops. And so, scale and performance. I'm going to get in a little bit about what we do. I mentioned to you before that restoring is really the need, right? So anybody can do a backup, but if it takes you 9 months to get it back, that doesn't really help you, right? So one of the things that we do is, so I mentioned earlier, as soon as the client's installed on the computer, it automatically takes the backup, no user interaction. That processing power and that encryption is happening at the computer, okay? So it's using the key at the computer, and then there's a key in the key store in the cloud. And because we're doing that, we're encrypting it, AES-256, with the computer processor, and when it sends it to the cloud, it's encrypted in transit, just like that. And so all that processing is happening here, and it's not happening at the cloud. Once it gets to the cloud, it's deduped and it's shrink down and so forth. Once it gets to the cloud, we store it, unlimited storage, we don't care. We can do that because we own our own hardware, and we're not affiliate, we don't store it with AWS, so we don't have to, I guess, leverage any increases and so forth that AWS might have. So that's our competitive advantage. We do use AWS for authority, for the key escrow and so forth, but for the data and so forth, that's in our hardware at Equinix on the East Coast and another data center on the West Coast. We got 7 throughout the world. So it allows us to provide that unlimited storage because we control those costs. So that's our competitive advantage. The other thing, when I said once it's encrypted and put to the cloud, it's not getting processed there, so there's not a bottleneck there. But when you bring it down, it's coming down and getting processed at the computer. So we're not having to have any single point of failure at the cloud. So there's more that goes into that, but that's essentially why when we restore, we can be a lot faster than everybody else, okay? I mentioned no single point of failure. Doesn't matter. Now, obviously, there is a technical limitation going to the cloud. I want to mention that. So as fast as you can go, but we do work with, we do have peering with internet too. So a lot of our campuses are, using that structure as well. I mentioned device level dedupes happening there, and it really, the idea is to make it work as fast as functional as possible. I like to call this this is our security slide. I have a security trust and assurance package that's 256 pages if you're interested. Includes SOC 2, Type 2, pen testing, all that good stuff, right? Good reading before you go to bed. This is what I call a snapshot of it. Just to mention, I mentioned it earlier, AES 256 and so forth. A lot of times we get, questions about NIST, questions about different, different frameworks. Do we work with ITAR? The answer is yes. We have all US citizens at our database and so forth, so I know some research and has some restrictions like that. If you have any questions, get in touch with us. Let me pause real quick. Any questions about what we've done so far? Hey, Luke.
I would have a question.
Can you throw the box so that it can get captured?
Oh,
Thank you.
is that what this is?
It is. Do you not have the box?
So I can chuck it, huh?
Yes.
Cool.
Okay, is this working? Okay. So you mentioned that the way the files are saved is like by the computer itself, like there's an encryption key like through the cloud, like that's how it gets synced to the computer. So I work at a school, and every once in a while, a teacher accidentally pours coffee on their computer, and then we have to get them a new MacBook to use temporarily. So with them moving from one computer to the other, is there a way on the new second computer to get the data that's pulled from the cloud that's synced to that original computer?
100%.
Okay.
I feel like the check should be in the mail to you because you're transitioning me to the next part. But yes, in fact, that is a big part of what we do. And let me just, I'm going to go right into that in just a second here. I did not talk to him before this. I just want you to know that. So getting back to our use cases, backup and recovery, these 4 down here are I'm going to go through them a little bit on, but it's going to get to your point, Luke. So backup and recovery, a lot of folks that are using us, they use it because they want that recovery, right? But ransomware with the, I don't know, I think it's going to continue to go even worse because of all the AI and so forth. It's going to be, it's just going to continue to grow. So ransomware recovery, we can get you back going quickly. If you have data on your endpoints, just like Luke mentioned, whether you spilled coffee on it or it's bricked because you clicked the wrong, whatever, how can you get back up and running? I mentioned a little bit earlier the self-service on how you can, your users can do it themselves. So that we can talk about that. And then the data migration, if you think about it, it's really the same thing. Like Luke mentioned, if this is bricked, so the way that works, we authenticate by user. And so every user can have up to 4 devices. We're very flexible with that, by the way. There's no hard stop on it. In some cases, we have shared computers where there might be more than 4 devices. We might have 6 or 7. There ends up being a technical limitation at some point, but it's pretty flexible. So the reason why that's important is, in Luke's case, I spill coffee on my computer, I get a new one. You give me my computer, I log in, as long as the CrashPlan client's on it, it's going to ask, the first thing it's going to ask me, it's going to prompt and say, hey, this is a new device. Is this a new device, right? Yes. Do you want your backup set from the old device on it? Yes. You click yes, yes, boom, starts automatically, your entire backup set that was from that previous computer is going to be on there. Now, when we at CrashPlan migrated our Macs, I mean, it saved a ton of time from about 3 to 4 hours down to 30 minutes because all that data come right back. And it's the data that I was using, right? So all the other stuff that might be I haven't touched in 3 years, it'll come back in order. But that's not the stuff I need. I need the stuff that I'm using right now, right? Same situation, you can think of all the situations. So we have, universities and so forth that use our product because it saves them a ton of time in device migrations. It moves the data over. Everything from, the screensaver, right? All that, some of that application data as well. So then when the new user gets it, they're like, yeah, this is exactly what it was like before. So that process, we have a lot of clients that's like their number one thing. They see the benefit right there, just in all the migrations. And then lastly, legal hold. We'll get into this a little bit, but legal hold, I mentioned earlier, is one of the main reasons why a lot of our customers use us, because they don't have to have hands on the computer. And the users don't know if they're in legal hold. So they're not notified of it, right? So you can put them in a legal matter, and if it's kind of for your eyes only, if the legal counsel or outside counsel needs that material, you can send them a link, and they have everything there. Then they only see what they need to see, if that makes sense. So that chain of custody is there. You don't need to necessarily have a closet and grab the machine, have that awkward conversation. Hey, why are you grabbing my machine? Don't worry about it. And throw it in a closet. All that can be done behind the scenes. So big use case for that. So getting to legal hold, I mentioned a little bit earlier, usually involves a manual. That's kind of the past. You don't have to do that. Most people have to deal with some type of litigation, 89%. If you're not doing it now, you probably will be. And a lot of time, the honesty is a lot of times people get put in a legal matter and it doesn't go anywhere. So I mentioned earlier some of those big companies that are big in social media. They have 120,000 licenses and endpoints. Legal hold's actually the number one reason why they're doing that. Especially with remote work, and people are taking their work in hybrid work, having a copy of what's on that machine, or even knowing what's on the machine, because most people actually don't even know exactly. So if something happens, they go, I don't even know what's on the machine. Or, have you ever gotten a machine back and it's completely wiped? Well, why do they wipe it? So there's that. The challenge with legal hold, I mentioned earlier, it's expensive. You got to do that awkward conversation of grabbing somebody's machine, typically, not with this. Having a copy, having it on the back end, being able to send it to legal counsel and so forth without having to physically doing anything, huge impact in lowering costs. So, I got a ton of information on legal hold. Let me ask, anybody interested in diving deeper into it? Nope. So this kind of walks through what the process was before having legal hold, what the process would be with CrashPlan. Basically, in a nutshell, what I just said earlier is it changes everything, right? Instead of having to physically do it, it's there. You have a copy of it. Back to what Luke was saying on device migration. So this is our major, one of our major use cases is, I mentioned earlier, we can protect your data. It's unlimited, so you don't have to pick and choose what you want to do. You don't have to, hey, I want to save some money here, so we're not going to cover this drive or instruct we just say, you know what, cover it all. We have it defaulted that way. That way, when it initially hits, when it's installed on the computer, takes that backup, you're covered. I mentioned before, they can still work on their files. Restore speeds up to 9 times faster. I kind of told you how the reason why that works. We restore the recent files first, and we integrate with your MDMs like Intune and Jamf. And in fact, our start was with Apple. We were an Apple company. I do have one person on my team that it's a holdout that has a Dell. Everybody has that, right? But for the most part, a lot of organizations and universities are using, we cover a lot of their Apple devices. And we also, along with Linux and so forth, but there's certainly, from day one, with CrashPlan, Apple's been a part of it, which is why we're here too. So this is getting back to what Luke had mentioned earlier on the data migrations. So when you're refreshing devices, they have the image on the machine, but what about the data? And I mentioned earlier, the way that we structure it, the way that I mentioned with the pop-up wizard, click, 2 things, that's what the user can do. You can also do it as an administrator if you want. It goes right to the device. This is some data. 38% of all data migrations fail. Not if they have CrashPlan, but this kind of walks through the steps of what you deal with when it comes to moving the data on device refreshing. Everything from, it's just the amount of time that it takes. Anything from you can think of it as a single file or a system of files. We've got countless stories of executives hopping on a plane like, oh, I forgot my PowerPoint file or it, gets damaged or what have you, and they grab another computer, log on to CrashPlan, bring it down. I mean, it's as simple as that. So, in fact, I heard the other day in Philly that, I didn't know this was the case, but apparently when I was talking to IT director that covers the athletic department at a major university in Philly that has a good basketball program, and he said, yeah, the funny thing is, after losses, I have to replace devices. They seem to break all the time. So he goes, CrashPlan's been really handy when it comes to that. So I don't know if that's the case, but I didn't catch it at first. And I go, he goes, yeah, screens get broken quite a bit. And I'm like, okay, good to know. So that's a use case as well. Not sure if it's part of your timelines. I mean, we've got stats on this cut down by 2/3. I mean, it's still going to take you time to do device migrations, but when that data can get moved over, I mean, we're talking literally from 3 to 4 hours to a half hour. This is that same before and after. This kind of goes through, what the process is typically before. And when I say device migration, I mean, this is the exact same process you would have if you unfortunately got hit with ransomware, because you're getting that data back, right? So the great thing is if unfortunately, we know that there's, a couple different types of ransomware that folks are getting. It's the traditional one is the bricking the machine. And then what's been around the last several years is the blackmail. We pulled this information from your machine and we're going to release it unless you pay us this ransom or whatever that is. And the problem that a lot of users have is they go, well, I'm not 100% sure what's on that machine, or should I care, right? And with something like CrashPlan, you know exactly what's on the machine. And, that way you can have an educated decision-making process and hopefully not have to do anything with the ransomware. So the device migration aspect of it is the same technology that you're going to use to get back up and running, something like that. Does that make sense? Ransomware. We haven't heard enough about that, have we? I mean, it's like the new buzzword. This is just some statistics that we ran. I find this astonishing. 265 billion with a B by 2031. Yeah, just a little bit of pocket change. That's why they're doing it. That's why it's exploding. And I honestly, my background's in security. I believe with Chat GPT and so forth, it's only going to increase. I mean, if you think about all the social engineering, and now, I mean, in the past it was, hey, look at this way it's misspelled and so forth. Well, now it's, you can get AI, it's going to look real good. I mean, it's going to look like a legitimate email and so forth. So my opinion is it's only going to grow. So we have to have a number of layers of protection to protect us against that. So CrashPlan could be one of them. Always bounce back. This is really going into the exact same thing, because when you get if you have ransomware, what's the biggest thing? You want to have the data on and be able to recover it back, right? I don't want to belabor the point, but even if you paid the ransom, there's no guarantee you're getting anything back. So, and sometimes there's legalities with that. In terms of the problem, new malware is born every 4 seconds. So that might be why it's estimated to be a $256 billion industry by 2031. When you think about what that is, it's pretty scary. Sync and share isn't backup. There's some things that we do within the product to make sure that the archive doesn't get hit with ransomware, or there isn't something that shows those kind of qualities and so forth. But like I said, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it won't ever happen, because that would be foolish. If new malware is born every 4 seconds, chances are I mean, it's just a law of large numbers, right? All right. So this goes through, because we have all the files and so forth, all the different versions. I mean, you can literally have every version you wanted, but at a point, the fidelity of that gets kind of crazy. So, usually people say after a year, like, I just need that one for the month. I don't need it like 50 of them for 1 month. So we do some trimming down. We recommend that. But if you wanted everything, you got it. So this is kind of I've got some more things on why OneDrive, Google Drive, cloud collaboration platforms like that, why they aren't backup, and why a lot of people use them as that way. A lot of people, and in some places they can work fine. But if you have valuable data on this endpoint and you want to make sure it's covered, you really need a backup solution for it, for kind of the 3 or 4 use cases I mentioned earlier. I mentioned earlier, no need to babysit users or tech. It gets that first backup right away. File version retention, believe it or not, one of the top 3 reasons why, when we survey customers on why when they use CrashPlan, I deleted a file and I want to get back. I deleted it in the spring semester, and now it's the fall. Guess what? A lot of those sync and shares, they drop it after like 30 days. So most of the time, a lot of people are saying, hey, I deleted a file, I want it back, and they go to the self-service tool and do it. So a lot of times the administrators they don't even know. They don't even know that the user went and we'll show them some of the statistics, and they can look within the console and they go, oh, really? Wow. There was 256 restores this month. That's crazy. I had no idea, because I only touched 20, So there's that. And then I mentioned before, bouncing back, whether it's a device migration or ransomware. So getting back at these kinds of problems that can come up. Here's a customer quote. By the time we started getting calls, more than 20 users had taken the bait. CrashPlan cut our recovery time in half. Getting back to that ransomware and so forth. All right. Q&A. I talked fast. I had too many cups of coffee this morning. It's a backup and recovery product. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, honestly. A lot of what I talked about was kind of the use cases. I've got a number of other ones too. But really what it comes down to is if you believe there's important data on your endpoint, there's people that do believe that, and there's people that don't. And if you do, probably a good idea to have it covered. Probably a good idea to have some defense in depth, right? Because of all the, if you look at my sign, it's that, it happens, we got your data back, right? So if crap happens, we got your data back. Let me pause there. Any questions? Hey, Luke. Oh, yeah. I like that thing.
So just a couple quick questions. So the files that are being backed up on the user computer, do they have to put files into CrashPlan per se and say I want this backed up, or is it automatically going into the hard drive of the computer and just backing up everything in there?
Good question. Very good question. So we have two products, and I should have mentioned this earlier, so thanks for mentioning that. We have two products. One's a consumer product, and if you're familiar with CrashPlan, a lot of people have used that in the past because it's been around. That is something that is meant for, like myself on a personal basis or anything else. You can download it on our website. It's $10 a month. Put your credit card in, it's unlimited. That's the consumer product. We call it SMB. I think we're taking the SMB out of it because it caused some confusion. In the past, so we have a lot of customers that use our consumer product. In fact, my favorite one is there's a video that's watching a bald eagle's nest, and it's getting backed up to CrashPlan, and it watches it 24/7. I'm sure we're losing money on it, but because it's that video file. But at the same time, it's my favorite thing, and it's been doing it for like 10 years. I don't know what they do with that information, but I'm sure it's some type of research. But that is part of our consumer product. And then we have an enterprise product where the reason why I bring that up is when you're setting up the consumer product, it automatically it gets all your files and so forth. And you have the ability to configure that if you want to. With the enterprise product, as an administrator, you do that on the front end. So we have what we call a global exclusions list. Those are there's some of the app files and things that you really don't want to back up. I mean, you can if you want to, but it's not really valuable in some cases. So we have an exclusion list, and you configure that on the front end. So when the application is delivered to the endpoint, which could be through Jamp or so forth, it's going to take all the backup based on that configuration. So when I mentioned what most people do, they just take everything. They just take everything because they don't want to miss anything. I do have some customers that say, hey, you know what? We're just going to cover the user drive, But because it's unlimited, there's no harm in grabbing all of it. So great question, Luke. Thank you. I just put some information here. There's, we've got a lot of customers that use sync and shares and so forth. If you want more information on, that is in the information I handed out, happy to talk to you more about it as well. But I will be happy to give you some time back today. If there's I'm around. If you have any more in-depth questions or you want to know where we're heading, what we're doing, I'm kind of in the know, sort of. I can find out, I'll put it that way. Thank you. Hey, Luke.
I do got one last question.
Yep.
You said that, you gave an example, a someone deletes a file and then 3 months later they want it back, they can immediately get it. Is there like a certain time period, like a year, that file then gets deleted, or is it kept there forever, essentially? Or,
That's a great question, and the answer to that is it depends on what your retention policy is. So with our public sector accounts, like our education and universities, a lot of times they want it forever. With some organizations, they say, sometimes they'll put a limit on it because they'll say, hey, you know what? I don't want anything past 90 days for liability reasons. What we recommend is and you have the ability to switch and do whatever you want, we just say keep it forever, especially the deleted files, because inevitably, if somebody wants a deleted file back, you don't want it to not be there, right? Yeah. So by default, we set it up for forever, but you have the ability to customize it.
okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.